A key ally to former President Donald Trump detailed plans to deploy the military in response to domestic unrest, defund the Environmental Protection Agency, and put career civil servants, quote, in trauma in a series of previously unreported speeches that provide a sweeping vision for a second Trump term. In private speeches delivered in 2023 and 2024, Russell Vought, this is one of the Project 2025 guys, who served as Trump's director of the Office of Management and Budget, described his work crafting legal justification so military leaders or governmental lawyers would not stop Trump's executive actions. He said the plans are a response to a Marxist takeover of the country, like in the movement to 1776 and 1860, when the country was at war or on the brink of it, and said the timing of Trump's candidacy was a gift of God. How long is this?
A new Trump administration must move quickly and decisively to turn the tables on the left by using the powers that have been delegated to the American state, the American government. This is the dragon smog's underbelly that lacks the scales that protect the belly. It is their Achilles heel. Because they never...
I'm sure Tolkien, an avowed anti-fascist, would be delighted to know how his work and references are appropriated. You know, like Nazis who are like, Tolkien had a definite sense of morality, and that's why he's based in Western trad. Yeah, go and look at what Tolkien had to say about Nazis, okay? Go and take a peek at that one.
Passed a constitutional amendment, they have to rely on the precedents and the paradigms. Their entire apparatus is exposed to our strategy. They are exposed to a president who, if he's a radical constitutionalist, who chooses to think and act like Thomas Jefferson or James Madison. And guess what? We have in Donald Trump a man who is so uniquely positioned to serve this role, a man whose own interests perfectly align with the interests of the country. He has seen what it has done to him, and he has seen what they are trying to do to the country. That is nothing more than a gift of God. Of course, this is why they fear him so much.
That's cool. ProPublica undocumented obtained videos the two speeches Vought delivered during events for the Center of Renewing America, a pro-Trump think tank led by Vought. The think tank's employees or fellows include Jeffrey Clark, the former senior Justice Department lawyer who aided Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election result, Ken Cuccinelli, a former acting deputy secretary in the Department of Homeland Security under Trump, and Mark Paoletta, a former senior budget official in the Trump administration. Steve Bannon, Chips Roy, Scott Perry. Vought sought to use Trump's 2020 Schedule F executive order to strip away job protections for nonpartisan government workers, but he has never spoken in such pointed terms about demoralizing federal agents to the point that they don't want to do their jobs. He's spoken in broad terms about undercutting independent agencies, but never spelled out sweeping plans to defund the EPA and other federal agencies. Vaught's plans track closely with a Trump campaign rhetoric about using the military against domestic protesters, what Trump has called the enemy within. Trump's desire to use the military on U.S. soil recently prompted his longest-serving chief of staff, John Kelly, to speak out, saying he prefers the dictator approach to government. Other policies mentioned by Vought dovetail with Trump's plans, such as embracing a wartime footing on the southern border or rolling back trans rights. Agenda 47, the campaign's policy blueprint, calls for revoking President Joe Biden's order expanding gender-affirming care for trans people. Vought uses even more extreme language, decrying, quote, transgender sewage that's being pumped into our schools and institutions, and referring to gender-affirming care as chemical castration. Close ally of the president claims that Trump is very supportive of what we do. Vought is widely expected to take a high-level government role if Trump wins a second term. His name has even been mentioned as a potential White House chief of staff, a shadow government in waiting. Vought laid out how his think tank is crafting the legal rationale for invoking the Insurrection Act, a law that gives the president broad power to use the military for domestic law enforcement. We want to be able to shut down the riots and not have the legal community or the defense community come in and say, that's an inappropriate use of what you're trying to do, he said. Vought held up the summer 2020 unrest following George Floyd's murder as an example of when Trump ought to have had the ability to deploy the armed forces, but was stymied.
And in our time in the administration, we lived in this place most of the time in the Oval Office. We would put forward some policy solution, and then we'd have the lawyers come in and say, it's not legal, you can't do that. That would overturn this precedent. There's a state law against that. This how is where so much of things break down in our country, and that's really what we specialize the most in, and we're trying to build at the Center for Renewing America almost a shadow Office of Management and Budget, We're trying to build a shadow office of legal counsel so that when a future president says, what legal authorities do I need to shut down the riots? We want to be able to shut down the riots and not have the legal community or the defense community to come in and say that's an inappropriate use of what you're trying to do.
Literally a deep state. Yeah, it's pretty crazy how much every accusation is a confession kind of deal. Yeah. Basically, they want to prepare all of the legal arguments that they'll need for doing the things that a fascist would do. They don't want Donald Trump to be, like, you know, surprised by any legal troubles when he's in office. They want to have all their legal defenses prepared. Another priority, according to Vought, was to defund certain independent federal agencies and demonize career civil servants, which include scientists and subject matter experts. Project 2025's plan to revive Schedule F and attempt to make it easier to fire large swath of government workers who currently have civil service protections aligns with Vaught's vision. We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected, he said. When they wake up in the morning, we want them to not go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. Keep in mind, he's not even talking about leftists here. He's talking about career civil servants. He's talking about people who literally only want to do their job. Because to a fascist, like, there is no place for you in government unless you're a loyalist. There's no, and this is one of the reasons why fascist governments burn out, because they get rid of the bureaucrats. Because bureaucrats make modern civilizations run. Like, that they're a necessary component of a functional state. And fascists are like, no, we only want loyalists. And this is one of the reasons why they always burn out. Like, how is this not treason? In any sane country, all of this would just get you jailed just at this point. How is this any different from the cops finding out that you have plans to shoot up a school? That's illegal, but like, oh, destroying the entire country is legal? This isn't even a component of the democratic process. This isn't even like annulling the will of the democratic majority or anything. This is literally just like, yeah, we're going to set up a shadow government so that when the grand dictator Trump, Heil Trump, takes charge, we can destroy the country more effectively and more efficiently with no one can stopping us. Like, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that I had unwittingly entered into a timeline where villainy is illegal and supervillainy is legal. Make it make sense.
We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. We want, when they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. We want their funding to be shut down so that the EPA can't do all of the rules against our energy industry because they have no bandwidth financially to do so. We want to put them in trauma.
Vought also revealed the extent of the Center for Renewing America's role in whipping up right-wing panic ahead of the 2022 midterms over an increase in asylum seekers crossing at the U.S.-Mexico border. In February 2022, Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich released a legal opinion claiming the state was under invasion by violent cartels and could invoke war powers to deploy National Guard troops to its southern border. The legally dubious invasion theory became a potent Republican talking point. Vought said in the 2023 speech that he and Cuccinelli, the former top Homeland Security official for Trump, personally lobbied Brnovich in the effort. We said, look, you can write your own opinion, but here's a draft opinion of what this should look like. It's the deep state. The Nazis did this too. Law for the restoration of the professional civil service, or the Gesetz zur Wiederherstellung des Berufsbeamtentums, shortened to, oh, how helpful, Berufsbeamtentums, I don't care, was enacted by the Nazi regime on April 7, 1933. This law, which followed Adolf Hitler's rise to power by 2 months and the promulgation of the Enabling Act by 2 weeks, constituted one of the earliest instances of anti-Semitism and racism in legislation in Germany. The primary objective of the law was to establish a national and professional civil service by dismissing certain groups of tenured civil servants. Individuals of non-Aryan origin, particularly those of Jewish descent, were compelled to retire, while members of the Communist Party or affiliated organizations were to be terminated from their positions. The law forbade Jews, non-Aryans, and political opponents from holding positions as teachers, professors, judges within the government. It is one-to-one. Just because they're not mentioning Jews directly, the point is to force out all bureaucratic civil servants in favor of hardcore fascist loyalists. Like, the only difference here is that thanks to the woke left and DEI, they can't say Jews and communists anymore. I mean, they do say communists. They just can't say Jews anymore. But the point, the like objective of the law is identical. It's one-to-one. It's exactly the same. Nothing short of a quiet revolution. The two speeches delivered by Vought, taken together, offer an unvarnished look at the animating ideology and political worldview of a key figure in the MAGA movement. Over the last century, Vought said, the U.S. has experienced nothing short of a quiet revolution and abandoned what he saw as the true meaning and force of the Constitution. What he means is that there are more non-white people here. When fascists talk about, like, America losing its way in the past century, they're talking about changes in immigration law during the what was it, Hart-Celler? Am I remembering that correctly? It's been a while since I've argued with a Nazi. The Hart-Celler law that allowed for an increase in non-white immigration. That's what they're talking about. The country today, he argued, was a post-constitutional regime, one that no longer adhered to the separation of powers among the three branches of government as laid out by the framers. He lamented the conservative right and nation writ large to become too secular and too globalist. Again, a reminder, this guy is saying the modern-day GOP is too secular and too globalist. That's how far right this guy is. This guy is also, again, probably not personally religious, as was the case with many Nazis. They'll bring up God a lot. A lot of them are, like, religious out of convenience. In reality, they belong to a kind of, like, secularized paganism, where a whole bunch of incoherent religious beliefs might, like, metaphysically justify their behavior. But this motherfucker is going to church every Sunday, okay? Same with J.D. Vance, same with Fuentes, same with Trump. They worship one thing, and it's death, okay? If you read, like, any passages of Christ to this guy, he would catch on fire, okay? Vought referred to the people detained for alleged crimes committed on January 6, 2021 as political prisoners, and defended the lawyers Jeffrey Clark and John Eastman, who have both faced criminal charges for their role in Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Federal law enforcement agencies, he added, are keeping political opponents in jail, and I think we need to be honest about that. The left, Vought continued, has the ultimate goal of ending representative democracy altogether. Keep in mind, every accusation is a confession. The stark reality in America is that we are in the late stages of a complete Marxist takeover of this country, in which our adversaries already hold the weapons of the government apparatus, and they have aimed it at us. And they are going to continue to aim it until they no longer have to win elections. I think it would be very satisfying if we could get, like, behind the scenes audio of these people admitting that they're going after powerless people and they're the ones who have all the power and they know they're evil. But in reality, fascists are deeply pathetic, and all of their rhetoric is based on them being on the defensive all the time. I guarantee you that if you had audio from, like, Hitler's chambers all throughout the 30s, everything would have been, well, we have no choice to do this because of the Jews. Like, literally everything they do at every point. They're too cowardly. They will never admit they are the ones who are enacting the harm and the hate. They never do, not in private, not in public. It would be satisfying to believe that like on their yachts, they're all laughing and drinking champagne and going, oh, ha, ha, we love hurting minorities, but they can't do it. They don't do it. The ideology demands they don't do it. They must always be the victims. They have to have a victim complex. They're making Trump out to be a would-be dictator or authoritarian, he said. In his view, the Democratic Party's agenda and its quiet revolution could only be stopped by a radical constitutionalist, someone in the mold of Thomas Jefferson or James Madison. The funny thing is I'm pretty sure if you took literally any one of the founding fathers and they saw the current state of affairs, the next day there would be, like, mass gallows for Republican officials. Thomas Jefferson may have been a slave owner, and he may have been, like, a radical anti-federalist, but he was they would not have looked kindly upon this back when the U.S. had values. Well, I wouldn't say that, but fascism wasn't even a thing back then. Yeah, I'm sure Jefferson, who was like a massive Francophile who loved the French Revolution, I'm sure that guy would have been like, yeah, actually, I love the MAGA movement. That's true. This Trump transition thing is even worse than you think. Check out this article on the transition team issue. It's like a chat GPT recommendation. Put a bit of flair in there. Democrat stakeholders continue to warn Trump won't be ready to govern without transition participation. Presidential transition board for joint communication. Trump is sorry for that. This doesn't matter because, like, if Trump wins, the government as we understand it isn't really going to exist anymore. Any Trump victory is going to be so chaotic and so fraught with controversy that, like, he doesn't want to have to engage with the federal agencies as a, like, transition candidate because he doesn't want to respect their authority. Like, he doesn't need to acknowledge them because he would destroy them. You know what I mean? Like, if anything, the fact that Donald Trump doesn't seem interested in communicating with the existing agencies as part of a transitionary process should be a confirmation that he intends to destroy them. Why else would he not communicate with them? You're telling me that, like, the guy who has a serious plan to be president isn't communicating with any of the, like, administrative state agencies that he's planning on governing over? Probably because he actually does want to do the thing Project 2025 is screaming from the rooftops that he's going to do, which is wipe them all out and replace them with loyalists. At which point he won't have to communicate with them because they'll be loyalists.